This rare audiobook combines the power of hypnosis and affirmations to reprogram the subconscious mind overnight. Designed to be listened to while you rest, it gently guides your thoughts into a calm, receptive state where new positive beliefs can take root. Introduction. The introduction of Listen to One Night and Don't Panic by the Results dives deeply into the concept of subconscious reprogramming and explains why hypnosis and affirmations, when used together, can create rapid and almost effortless transformation. It emphasizes that the mind has two primary layers: the conscious, which deals with logic and daily thoughts, and the subconscious, which stores emotions, memories, habits, and deeply rooted beliefs. The introduction makes it clear that most of the struggles people face, such as anxiety, panic, self-doubt, or feelings of being stuck, are not created at the surface level of the conscious mind, but are deeply imprinted within the subconscious. Traditional methods of self-improvement often fail because they attempt to make changes through willpower alone. But willpower can easily be defeated when the subconscious holds on to fear-based programming. This audiobook, however, is presented as a rare method that bypasses conscious resistance by guiding the listener into a state of deep relaxation or sleep when the subconscious becomes open, soft, and highly suggestible. The introduction reassures the listener that they don't have to try to make anything happen. Instead, they are simply asked to listen, let go, and trust the process. Hypnosis is described not as a form of control, but as a natural state that everyone experiences daily, similar to the drowsy moments before sleep or the relaxed focus felt while daydreaming. In this state, the protective filters of the conscious mind quiet down, allowing affirmations to sink in like seeds being planted in fertile soil. These affirmations are carefully chosen to neutralize panic, fear, and resistance, while replacing them with feelings of calmness, confidence, and emotional safety. The introduction also highlights how listening during sleep is especially powerful, because while the body rests and the conscious mind is inactive, the subconscious continues to work tirelessly, absorbing suggestions without resistance. This means change can take place in a way that feels gentle yet profound, almost as if the listener is waking up to a new version of themselves without forcing anything. The introduction also emphasizes that results can sometimes feel surprisingly quick, hence the title encouraging listeners not to panic at the changes they may notice after even a single night. These results might include a sudden sense of inner peace, a release of old fears, more clarity in decision-making, or an unexplained boost in self-belief. At the same time, it sets realistic expectations, explaining that while some shifts may be immediate, deeper transformations come with repeated listening, as new affirmations gradually overwrite old negative programming. By framing the audiobook as both a one-night experience and a long-term tool, the introduction creates both excitement and trust in the process. Another layer of detail in the introduction lies in its soothing reassurance. Many people approach hypnosis with skepticism or fear, imagining it to be unnatural or controlling, but the audiobook explains that it is actually a safe, gentle, and natural state the mind already knows well. It compares the experience to drifting into sleep with a comforting guide, someone who whispers empowering words at the exact moment the subconscious is most ready to receive them. The introduction further explains that this is why hypnosis and affirmations combined are far more effective than affirmations alone. Without hypnosis, affirmations can be rejected by the conscious mind as unrealistic or untrue. But in hypnosis, they bypass those filters and are accepted as possible realities. The tone of the introduction is warm and inviting, aiming to dissolve any resistance or doubt before the actual listening begins. It positions the audiobook not as a strict set of instructions, but as a supportive companion that gently works in the background while the listener rests. The metaphor of planting seeds is often implied. Just as seeds take time to grow beneath the soil before showing visible results, affirmations take root in the subconscious first, and only later manifest in outer life. This creates an atmosphere of patience and trust, reminding the listener that even if changes seem subtle at first, the mind is already at work creating a new foundation. By the end of the introduction, the listener feels both reassured and empowered, understanding that they don't need to force results or worry about the process. All that is required is openness, consistency, and willingness to listen. The promise of transformation is not presented as magic, but as the natural outcome of aligning with how the mind truly works. The introduction essentially acts as a gentle, hand-holding moment, preparing the listener for the journey ahead and inspiring confidence that by the time they wake up, something within them may already feel lighter, calmer, and more in harmony with who they wish to become. Chapter 1. Preparing the Mind for Change. Chapter 1 expands the simple idea of get ready to listen into a precise pre-hypnotic ritual that aligns body, breath, attention, and expectation so the subconscious willingly opens to new suggestions. It begins by framing intention, inviting the listener to name a single feeling or pattern they wish to transform, because clear intention acts like a compass that silently guides the session. It then addresses environment, encouraging dim light, comfortable temperature, silence notifications, and a supportive sleep posture so the nervous system reads strong safety signals. Next, it guides a slow body scan from crown to toes, noticing micro-tensions in the jaw, shoulders, diaphragm and hips, and softening them on the out-breath to reduce sympathetic arousal. Breathing is paced into smooth, even cycles, for example, longer exhales than inhales, to cue calm and stabilize attention. Attention itself is trained with gentle anchors, counting breath, tracing the outline of the body, or listening to the faintest background sound so wandering thoughts lose urgency. The chapter normalizes resistance, skepticism, restlessness, the urge to check progress, and reframes it as a protective habit, offering a compassionate inner script. Thank you, I'm safe now, which quiets the gatekeeping conscious. Mind, it teaches expectancy priming, briefly imagining how calm and clear tomorrow could feel, because the subconscious follows felt expectations more than arguments. It introduces a neutral inner narrator that notices sensations without judgment, loosening old belief loops. Small physical cues, loosening the tongue from the roof of the mouth, unclenching hands, letting the eyes rest heavy, are used as release switches that subtly downshift the whole system. The listener is invited to visualize a mental threshold, perhaps a softly lit doorway or descending staircase, each step paired with a slow breath symbolizing entry into receptive depth. The chapter explains why this matters. In relaxed focus, the brain privileges imagery, rhythm, and simple affirmative phrases, so priming those channels first makes later affirmations feel self-generated rather than imposed. It also clarifies timing, ideally the final 20-30 minutes before sleep, volume, low enough to be effortless, and attitude, curiosity over striving, because straining to do it right pulls the mind back to control. To prevent overthinking, it offers a park and return technique, mentally placing worries in a box to revisit tomorrow, thereby preserving cognitive resources for imprinting. It introduces an anchor gesture, a slow palm press over the heart or a relaxed exhale cue that will be reused during the audiobook to instantly recall the prepared state. Finally, it closes by weaving these elements into a brief rehearsal. Intention set, environment softened, body unbraced, breath smoothed, resistance befriended, doorway imagined, so that when the hypnosis begins, the listener has already shifted. From analysis to allowance, from guardedness to gentle permission, giving the affirmations that follow a welcoming inner space where they can settle, take root, and begin to change felt experience from the inside out. Chapter 2. Deep Relaxation. Induction. Chapter 2 is designed to guide the listener into a depth of calm so immersive that the conscious mind naturally loosens its grip and the subconscious rises into full receptivity, and the detail in this process unfolds in multiple layers. It begins by reshaping the listener's breathing pattern into a slow, rhythmic cycle with longer exhales, because the exhale signals the parasympathetic nervous system to switch on, reducing cortisol and softening the heart rate. Once the breath sets the pace, attention is brought to the body through a gentle scanning technique, starting at the crown of the head and traveling slowly downward, with each area invited to release tension as though it were warm wax melting under sunlight, so that muscles unclench not by force, but through suggestion. Every release is paired with a deepening phrase like letting go more and more, which both directs and affirms the process, creating a sense of surrender. The chapter then adds layered imagery, sometimes inviting the listener to picture themselves floating on a calm ocean, resting on a soft cloud, or walking down a long staircase where each step takes them deeper into serenity. And these metaphors are powerful because the subconscious responds to imagery more strongly than logic. Progressive relaxation is emphasized, where even tiny muscles around the eyes, jaw, and fingertips are soothed, reminding the listener that no detail is too small, since every micro-tension released signals safety and trust to the mind. Counting. Sequences are often introduced, such as counting backward from 10 to 1, where each number acts as a marker of descent into a deeper inner state, with the reassurance that when the final number is reached, the body and mind will be fully receptive. This chapter also acknowledges natural interruptions, like wandering thoughts or sudden awareness of physical sensations, reframing them as proof that the process is working, since every time attention drifts and is gently guided back, the mind goes even deeper than before. An important element is the balance between heaviness and lightness, where the body is encouraged to feel heavy, sinking into the bed or chair, while the awareness feels lighter, freer, as though floating, producing a paradoxical sense of weightless groundedness that signals the subconscious that control can be released safely. Gentle affirmations are woven subtly into this stage, not yet the core transformational ones, but soft reminders such as "you are safe, everything is okay, and you can let go now," which create an emotional container of trust. The chapter further explains the science of this state, likening it to the liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, where brain waves move from beta into alpha and theta, conditions known to amplify learning, memory, and suggestion, so the listener understands this isn't random relaxation, but a purposeful neurological shift. Repeated reassurances are given that even partial relaxation is enough, since the subconscious requires only openness, not perfection, to begin absorbing new beliefs. Finally, the chapter anchors the state by planting the suggestion that every sound, pause, and word from this point forward will naturally guide the listener even deeper, turning the relaxed mind into fertile soil where the affirmations and hypnotic guidance in the following chapters will settle, grow, and bloom into lasting inner change, creating both anticipation and readiness for the transformation ahead. Chapter 3. Releasing Fear and Resistance. Chapter 3 goes far beyond a simple exercise in relaxation and becomes a complete process of dissolving the subconscious barriers that keep the mind trapped in anxiety, panic, or self-sabotage. And the detail of this process unfolds in layers that address both physiology and psychology. The chapter first establishes that fear is not random, but a conditioned pattern the subconscious built for survival, often triggered by old memories, painful experiences, or even imagined possibilities, and it explains that resistance is the subconscious way of clinging to the familiar because change, even positive change, feels uncertain. By reframing fear and resistance not as enemies but as outdated protectors, the listener begins to feel compassion rather than conflict toward these inner forces, which softens their grip. The process begins with conscious breathing techniques, slow, steady inhalations, followed by extended, releasing exhalations that calm the vagus nerve and signal the body's fight or flight system to stand down, creating the physiological conditions for release. Visualization is then introduced, such as imagining fear as a dark fog in the chest, or a heavy chain around the shoulders that begins to dissolve with every breath, turning into light or drifting away with the exhale, so the listener sees and feels the weight lifting. Resistance is symbolized as a locked door or a tight knot, and the mind is guided to gently unlock or untangle it, reinforcing that opening up does not require force, but willingness. Affirmations are woven throughout, carefully chosen, so they do not clash with the subconscious, but soothe it into agreement. Phrases like, "It is safe to let go now," "I no longer need fear to protect me," and "I welcome peace into this space" are repeated in calm, rhythmic tones, gradually replacing old messages of panic with safety. The chapter also addresses the bodily symptoms of fear: tight chest, shallow breathing, clenched jaw, racing thoughts, and pairs each with a release technique, such as unclenching the jaw with a smile, resting the hands open on the lap, or imagining the heart expanding with warmth so the body no longer reinforces fear signals. It reassures the listener that fear may try to return out of habit, but each time it does, it has less strength, because the subconscious is learning a new script. Resistance is described as the last barrier before change, like the tension before a breakthrough, and by guiding the listener to lean into trust, the audiobook helps dissolve that wall gently. The imagery of flowing water, waves washing over, rocks or leaves carried away by the wind is used to show that letting go is a natural process, not something to force. The chapter emphasizes repetition, encouraging the listener to allow layer after layer of fear to dissolve, as though peeling away coats of heaviness until only calm remains. It closes by anchoring this release with the suggestion that every breath, every night of listening, will make fear and resistance weaker and peace stronger, so that from this point onward, the subconscious will more easily accept affirmations without struggle. By the end, the listener feels lighter, freer, and safer within themselves, as though a heavy burden they carried unconsciously for years has finally been lifted, leaving behind openness and readiness for deeper transformation. In the following chapters, Chapter 4, The Language of the Subconscious, Chapter 4 expands the idea that the deeper mind learns through experience-like inputs rather than arguments, and shows, in practical detail, how to craft messages it readily adopts. It explains that the subconscious favors simplicity, present-tense certainty, sensory concreteness, and repetition with gentle variation, so phrases like "I am safe," paired with a felt sense of warmth in the chest and the image of a steady light, register as lived moments rather than wishes. It highlights that the deeper mind organizes meaning associatively, linking images, tones, places, and emotions, which is why pairing an affirmation with a consistent cue, such as a slow exhale, a hand over the heart, or the soft image of a doorway, accelerates acceptance. It clarifies that rhythm and prosody matter because steady cadence and pauses act like handles the mind can grasp, letting suggestions sink in between breaths. It shows how positive phrasing works better than Complex negations, so "I sleep peacefully" tends to integrate more cleanly than "I will not be anxious," which keeps attention on anxiety. It introduces bridging language for skeptical moments. Statements like "I'm open to feeling safer now," or "It's becoming easier to trust my calm," which reduce inner pushback while still moving identity forward. It distinguishes between content and carrier, noting that tone, gentleness, and confidence are as important as the words, because the subconscious tracks safety in the voice the way a child responds to a lullaby. It teaches sensory layering. As the words are heard, one also imagines a color, soft gold for ease, a texture, velvet air around the body, and a sound, distant waves, giving the mind multiple routes to accept the same message. It recommends micro loops of 3 to 5 allied statements: safety, release, identity, behavior, outcome. For example, "I am safe here. I let go on the exhale. Calm belongs to me. I choose gentleness now. My whole body remembers peace." Then, looping back with small variations, so novelty keeps attention, while repetition writes the pattern. It explains that metaphors act like compressed code: light for clarity, water for cleansing, doors for permission, stairs for descent. So one metaphor can carry many instructions without triggering analysis. It details embedded choice, language. You may notice your breath soften now or in a moment, which signals autonomy, reducing resistance and inviting cooperation. It describes state-dependent learning. Messages installed in calm states are easiest to recall by reactivating that calm. So listeners are taught an anchor: touch, breath, image. They can use later to reopen the same receptive channel. It outlines sequence logic: begin with safety and permission, move to release and forgiveness, then to identity claims: "I am the one who chooses calm," and finally to micro behaviors: "I soften my shoulders, I breathe evenly." Because identity without behavior lacks traction, and behavior without identity lacks staying power. It covers time language, advising present tense for stability: "I am," near present process for growth: "I am becoming," and near future expectancy: "I wake clear and refreshed," to recruit momentum without straining belief. It introduces echo phrasing, where the guide briefly mirrors a spontaneous sensation, that tiny ease in your chest, yes, that, to amplify it, teaching the mind what to notice and keep. It suggests gentle contrasts to reframe old patterns. Even if worry knocks, calm answers the door, which acknowledges reality while privileging the desired response. It uses permission tags, and that's okay. You're allowed to rest now, to switch off performance pressure that often blocks absorption. It explains that the subconscious indexes experiences by emotional salience, so mild, steady pleasantness, repeated many times, can outperform rare, intense motivation, hence the audiobook's soft, frequent waves of reassurance instead of dramatic speeches. It recommends identity cues that are small but concrete, the feeling of a straightened spine when saying "I am supported," because the body gives the mind proof. It advises avoiding abstract universals: "Everything is perfect," in favor of specific testable claims. "My breath is smooth, my shoulders are easy," which builds credibility the mind can generalize later. It teaches context hooks, tying affirmations to daily triggers: "Each time I wash my hands, I return to ease." So the environment becomes a teacher. It describes nested loops, where a calming story is begun, paused for key suggestions, then completed, letting the unfinished curiosity keep the conscious mind busy while the message slips deeper. It clarifies that speed matters. Too fast overwhelms, too slow invites drifting. So the narration cruises at a human breath pace, with pauses long enough for inner imagery to form. It suggests felt proofs, asking the listener to find a micro-evidence of the statement right now. Notice that 2% more softness in your jaw, which binds language to sensation. It uses gentle inevitability words, naturally, easily, already, to signal that the desired state is the path of least resistance. It addresses doubt by absorbing it into the script. Part of you may question this, and that part can rest, while another part enjoys how calm this feels. Validating all parts, so none need to rebel. It describes emotional gradients, guiding from neutral to mild ease to steady calm to quiet confidence, because the subconscious accepts near neighbors more readily than big leaps. It reminds that memory consolidates patterns, so short, consistent exposures are stacked to create a background hum that normalizes calm. It closes by integrating everything into a practical formula, simple present tense lines, spoken with warmth, cadence paired with breath, a body cue and a vivid image, repeated in micro-loops with gentle variation and permission. So the affirmations that follow are not heard as slogans, but felt as truth, allowing the deeper mind to adopt peace, safety, and strength as its native language. Chapter 5. The Power of Night Listening. Chapter 5 explains that nighttime is uniquely suited for subconscious imprinting because the mind naturally cycles through states that reduce inner resistance, and it shows exactly how to work with those states rather than against them. As you wind down, the mind passes through the hypnagogic window where attention softens, imagery becomes vivid, and alpha then theta rhythms rise. This is a prime, open gate for suggestions. During the night, sleep tends to flow in repeating cycles, and at the light sleep edges of those cycles, the auditory system remains partially responsive, so softly delivered affirmations can slip in without triggering analysis. The chapter stresses that you don't need to stay awake or track words. Like how you can wake to a faint sound, the deeper mind keeps listening and tagging meaning even when conscious awareness fades. It clarifies that steady, low volume, gentle cadence, and unhurried. Pauses matter because they mimic the body's nocturnal tempo, allowing words to synchronize with breath and heartbeat. It recommends a simple pre-sleep ritual: dim lights, a brief stretch, 2 or 3 slower exhales than inhales, and a single sentence of intention to prime the nervous system for safety and give the subconscious a compass. It explains why short, looping micro-sequences outperform dense scripts at night. Repetition engraves, while novelty can wake the analytical mind, so clusters like safe now, soft now, sleeping deeper, waking clearer are layered again and again. It shows how to time the start, so the audio begins while you're drowsy and continues through the first sleep cycle with a long, unobtrusive loop so you never lunge for controls. It provides practical setup details. Use airplane mode. Reduce notifications, pick a pillow, speaker, or single earbud if needed. Enable a slow fade-in and generous gap between loops to avoid startle, and keep the screen off to protect melatonin. It describes pairing words with an image felt just before drifting off. Warm light in the chest, a door quietly closing on worry, a shoreline breathing with your breath. So the same imagery reappears in dreams, multiplying the imprint. It reframes awakenings as opportunities rather than failures. If you stir, notice one calm phrase matching one calm breath and let it carry you back under, teaching the mind that nighttime equals soothing. It addresses common concerns, fearing you'll miss the session, worrying the volume is too low, or noticing you fell asleep quickly, and reminds you that the goal is not conscious recall, but effortless absorption. It suggests safe guardrails if you're sensitive, set a maximum volume limit, choose tracks without abrupt crescendos, and stop the loop near expected wake time so the last sleep cycle is extra gentle. It emphasizes consistency over intensity. Several quiet nights beat one dramatic session because memory systems consolidate small, repeated signals into background defaults. It introduces evening to morning bridges, brief lines placed near the end of the track that anticipate the first minutes after waking. Your shoulders remember soft, your breath remembers smooth. So the night learning transfers into morning behavior. It proposes environmental anchors that echo the audio's tone. Cool air, tidy bedside, a favorite calming scent, so the room itself becomes part of the message and reduces the chance of panic cues. It highlights that identity. Phrases are best placed after safety phrases because a relaxed system receives "I am steady" more readily than a vigilant one. It explains why negative phrasing can backfire at night. "Don't be anxious" still highlights anxiety and shows how to pivot toward affirmative or process language. "You can let the next breath be easy." It suggests a quiet close for the track, longer silences, feather-light phrasing, so you slide into deep cycles without cognitive friction. It notes that morning recall is optional but useful. Noticing even a 5% increase in ease trains the brain to label the night as successful, which strengthens expectancy for the next session. It covers logistics for shared spaces, bone conduction pillow speakers, minimal bleed-through, and for travel, downloaded files, a compact routine, a familiar scent to keep continuity. It normalizes plateaus, explaining that the mind consolidates in spurts and that quiet stretches often precede visible leaps. It shows how to adapt the script over weeks, keeping core lines stable while rotating a few context-specific statements, sleep quality, confidence, calm decisions, to prevent habituation. It recommends a gentle check-in after a week, rate sleep ease, morning mood, reactivity to stress, then adjust loop length or phrasing accordingly. It weaves in compassion for nights that are rough, inviting you to tag any wakeful rest as training. The calm response in challenging conditions, so the practice never counts as failure. It explains that this approach turns hours that used to pass passively into a nightly apprenticeship in safety and self-trust. So by sunrise, the nervous system has rehearsed calm dozens of times. It reassures that you retain agency. Stop anytime, change tracks or shift focus, because choice itself quiets resistance. It closes by underlining the central promise. Align your messages with the body's nocturnal rhythm. Keep them soft, simple and steady, and each night will lay down another layer of ease, so you don't have to strive for transformation during the day. The night is already doing the heavy lifting while you rest. Chapter 6. Core Affirmations for Confidence. Chapter 6 dives into how affirmations become powerful tools to rewire the subconscious mind, showing that confidence is not something external we chase, but rather an internal state we uncover and strengthen by feeding the subconscious with repeated, empowering messages until they become its default language. The chapter begins by exploring the nature of confidence itself, explaining that most people carry unconscious scripts formed by childhood experiences, failures, criticism, or social comparison that constantly whisper self-doubt and hesitation. And these scripts influence the way we speak, walk, and make decisions, often without us realizing it. Affirmations act like corrective scripts, deliberately introduced into the subconscious to neutralize and replace the old ones, and the chapter stresses that the words must be chosen with precision, since the subconscious responds poorly to vague or future-focused phrases like, "I will be confident one day," but readily accepts firm, present-tense statements like, "I am confident now," or "I trust myself in all situations." It explains that confidence affirmations should be simple, direct, and rhythmic, because the subconscious absorbs short and repeated patterns more easily than complex ideas, and this is why lines such as, "I speak with ease," "I believe in my abilities," and "I am safe to be seen" carry far more power than lengthy intellectual statements. The chapter also reveals how tone and delivery matter. Affirmations recorded with a calm, steady, and compassionate voice sink deeper, because the subconscious associates emotional safety with credibility, so a gentle but confident delivery communicates both authority and warmth, bypassing resistance. It describes how affirmations are most effective when layered with emotional imagery, such as hearing the phrase, "I am steady and calm," while picturing yourself standing tall, breathing evenly, and speaking with clarity. Because the subconscious mind processes images and emotions more readily than words alone, meaning that pairing them transforms abstract sentences into embodied truths. The text emphasizes that nighttime listening makes this practice especially potent, since during drowsiness and sleep, the analytical filters are lowered, making the subconscious more suggestible. And even if the conscious mind dozes off, the affirmations are still registered at a deep level, much like how a faint sound or name can wake you during sleep. It reassures listeners that belief does not have to be instant or forced. At first, affirmations may feel untrue or awkward, but with repeated exposure, the subconscious gradually normalizes them, reducing the emotional charge of old fears while strengthening the weight of new beliefs, until one day the words feel natural, as though they had always been true. The chapter also explores how affirmations should cover multiple layers of life: inner states, "I am calm inside," self-image, "I am worthy and capable," social presence, "I speak with clarity and ease," and resilience, "I handle challenges with strength," creating a balanced foundation of confidence that applies both inwardly and outwardly. It addresses the problem of inner resistance by reminding that the subconscious does not require agreement to learn. It only requires repetition. So even if the conscious mind doubts the words, the subconscious still records them, and the doubt itself gradually fades as the new belief takes root. The chapter explains that attaching affirmations to subtle physical cues, like repeating them with relaxed shoulders, a deep breath, or a faint smile, accelerates their absorption because the body and mind anchor the words in felt experience, making them more believable. It further highlights that affirmations are most effective when they avoid negations, since telling yourself, "I am not weak," still highlights weakness, while saying, "I am strong and capable," directs the mind toward the desired state. Practical strategies are also given, such as creating short sets of 3 to 5 affirmations to loop during sleep, adjusting the order so that grounding phrases like "I am safe" or "I am calm" come first, followed by identity-building phrases like "I am confident" and "I trust my choices," ensuring that the subconscious receives them in the right sequence. The chapter emphasizes consistency above all. Listening every night, even passively, compounds the effect, because the subconscious thrives on repetition and slowly integrates the affirmations into automatic thought patterns, meaning that over weeks or months, nervousness and hesitation are replaced by steady self-assurance without conscious struggle. It concludes by showing how these core affirmations act like seeds planted in the fertile soil of the subconscious. Though invisible at first, they germinate, grow roots, and eventually blossom into a lasting, authentic confidence that expresses itself naturally in speech, action, and presence, so that the listener does not just act confident temporarily, but embodies confidence as an unshakable part of who they are. Chapter 7. Healing Emotional Blocks. Chapter 7 goes much deeper by exploring how unresolved emotional pain, often buried in the subconscious mind, quietly shapes daily life, creating repeating cycles of fear, resistance, or self-sabotage. And this chapter carefully unpacks how and why those patterns form, why they linger for years, and how hypnosis and affirmations can finally loosen their grip. It begins by explaining that emotional blocks are not random, but are usually created when the mind encounters overwhelming experiences, moments of rejection, betrayal, failure, loss, or trauma, that were too intense to process fully. So instead of being healed at the time, the emotions were pushed down and stored like frozen memories in the subconscious, waiting for a safe time to resurface. These buried wounds may show up later in subtle ways: hesitation when making decisions, fear of speaking up, avoidance of intimacy, or a constant inner voice of doubt that whispers you are not good enough. The chapter describes how the subconscious, trying to protect us, builds walls around these unhealed emotions, which can feel like invisible limits or repeated struggles in life. But those same walls also prevent growth and joy, keeping the person stuck in patterns they do not consciously understand. Through hypnosis, the conscious mind softens and the subconscious becomes more open, allowing those frozen emotions to be approached gently without the intensity that originally caused the block. Instead of reliving pain, the process reframes it. The listener is guided into a state of deep calm where affirmations like, "I am safe now," "I allow healing into my heart," and "I release what no longer serves me," help the mind update its old protective scripts, teaching the subconscious that it no longer needs to hold on to pain in order to stay safe. The chapter emphasizes that this healing is not about erasing memories, but about releasing the heavy emotional charge tied to them, so that past events can remain as experiences without controlling present emotions. The chapter explains that during night listening, the subconscious becomes even more receptive because as the body relaxes into sleep, the critical, analytical filters fade, and unresolved emotions naturally rise to the surface for processing. This is why people sometimes dream vividly or wake up with unexpected clarity after listening to healing affirmations. The affirmations act like gentle guides, reprogramming the subconscious to replace fear, guilt, or shame with acceptance, strength, and peace. The chapter also describes the role of the body in storing emotions, noting that unprocessed sadness might sit heavy in the chest, suppressed anger in the stomach, or fear in the throat, and that as healing affirmations are absorbed, listeners may feel sensations like warmth, tingling, or lightness in these areas, which is a sign of emotional energy being released. It explains that this process is gradual, often unfolding layer by layer, because the subconscious only lets go at a pace that feels safe, which is why consistency, listening nightly without pressure, is more powerful than trying to force sudden breakthroughs. The chapter reassures that moments of emotional discomfort, such as feeling tearful or restless, should not be feared, but embraced as signs that energy is moving, and that the mind is slowly letting go of burdens that were carried, sometimes for decades. It goes on to explore how affirmations designed for healing are carefully worded to create safety and softness, since the subconscious resists forceful commands when it comes to old wounds, but responds beautifully to compassionate, reassuring language like, "I am safe to let go," "I forgive myself and others," or "peace flows through me." The chapter emphasizes that forgiveness in this context does not mean excusing harmful actions, but rather cutting the energetic ties that keep a person trapped in past pain, thereby reclaiming emotional freedom. It also highlights that healing emotional blocks often leads to positive ripple effects in life. Relationships improve because the person no longer projects old wounds onto others. Confidence rises because fear of failure fades, and inner peace grows because the subconscious no longer spends energy guarding against old threats. Over time, listeners notice that situations that once triggered panic, defensiveness, or sadness no longer carry the same weight, showing that the subconscious has fully reprogrammed its associations. The chapter concludes by reminding that emotional healing is one of the most transformative gifts hypnosis and affirmations can offer. It is like clearing clogged pathways within the mind and body, allowing energy, creativity, love, and joy to flow freely again. The blocks that once held a person back dissolve not through struggle, but through gentle, consistent listening. And eventually the listener awakens to a life that feels lighter, freer and more aligned, no longer defined by past wounds, but empowered by the peace and wholeness found within. Chapter 8. Programming, Abundance and Clarity. Chapter 8 digs into how to move the mind from scarcity, confusion, and indecision into a stable field of expectation, focus, and magnetism by rewiring attention, meaning, and action at the subconscious level. It begins by defining abundance broadly: resources, time, love, opportunities, creativity, and explains how scarcity thinking develops: early messages, comparison loops, threat-based survival habits, and narrow attentional filters that make the brain scan for lack rather than possibility. And then shows exactly how hypnotic language and layered affirmations dismantle those patterns by shifting what the subconscious looks for and remembers. Practically, the chapter prescribes precise linguistic and embodied strategies, present tense, specific affirmations like, "I notice new opportunities every day," rather than vague promises, coupled with sensory-rich visualizations, seeing, hearing, and feeling the outcome as already real, because the subconscious responds to vivid, rehearsed experience more readily than abstract advice. And it outlines sequencing rules. Start with safety and permission. I am safe to receive. Move to identity anchors. I am a person who attracts good things. Then micro behaviors. I take one clear step each day. And finish with outcome frames. Opportunities flow to me easily. So beliefs, actions, and results align. The chapter details technical methods, micro loops of 3 to 5 related statements repeated in sleep and waking, embedded choices, "you may notice," or "you may notice later," permission tags to reduce resistance, echo phrasing to amplify subtle shifts, anchors, a touch to the chest, a slow exhale to recreate the receptive state later, and context hooks that tie new habits to every day. Cues. After pouring tea, ask, "What next?" So external environment becomes a continual teacher. It explains how night listening leverages hypnagogic and theta windows to imprint expectancy, and how morning bridge lines translate nocturnal learning into daytime clarity. And it stresses pairing internal programming with small, testable actions, micro-experiments. Like sending one outreach email, saying yes to one low-risk offer, or clearing a 10-minute block for focus, because the subconscious accepts evidence as proof, and small successes compound belief. The chapter also addresses common obstacles, cognitive dissonance, when affirmations feel untrue. Use bridging language like, "I'm open to," habituation, rotate core phrases while keeping anchors stable, and ethical scarcity myths, reframe abundance as non-zero sum through relational and community imagery, and gives troubleshooting steps: lower volume, shorten loops, add felt proofs, notice 1% more ease in the chest, or attach gratitude practice to the end of each night loop to shift the brain's reference point. It offers concrete scripts and variations for different areas. Money, I manage and receive resources easily. Clarity, decision-making, my mind sorts priorities with ease. I see my next right step. And explains why specificity matters. For clarity, naming small, measurable outcomes builds neural pathways for decisive action. Neuro principles are woven in simply repetition, plus emotional resonance, plus state-dependent learning, changed associative maps, so consistent nightly exposure, plus daytime anchors creates both new baseline expectations and faster pattern recognition for opportunities. Finally, the chapter ties everything to a practical integration plan. Set an intention each evening, use a 10-20-minute pre-sleep loop that begins with safety cues. Follow with identity and action phrases. Include a brief morning reminder and a one-line journal check each day. so the listener steadily converts passive wishes into practiced habits and measurable shifts in perception, decision speed, and results, turning nights into a quiet laboratory for cultivating a mindset. Where abundance is recognized, clarity is habitual, and choices naturally follow. Chapter 9. The Energy of Letting Go. Chapter 9. The energy of letting go takes the simple idea of release and unfolds it into a multi-layered practical map for how emotional unburdening actually happens inside the body and mind. Beginning with a clear diagnosis, holding on to past hurts, grudges, shame, control strategies, or unmet needs is energetically costly because the nervous system keeps running threat patterns: tight chest, shallow breath, braced shoulders, anxious thinking that siphon attention and creativity. The chapter explains how those patterns form through charged experiences that get stored as associative loops in the limbic system and body memory, and why the subconscious prefers the predictability of old pain over the uncertainty of change. It then lays out a stepwise, compassionate process for letting go that is safe and neuroscience-informed. First, build safety, softening breath, an anchor gesture like a hand to the heart, a clear intention phrase, so the nervous system feels permitted to relax. Next, use guided hypnagogic access and gentle imagery, imagining a river carrying a leaf, a door that can be set to closed but not forgotten, or smoke dissolving on the exhale, to symbolically separate the emotional charge from the memory itself. The script emphasizes present tense, permission-based language. You are allowed to release. It is safe to let this go now, because the subconscious responds best to gentle invites rather than commands. The chapter teaches specific somatic pairings: longer exhales to engage the vagus nerve, progressive unclenching to dissolve stored tension, and micro movements, a slow shoulder roll or yawning stretch that signals safety to the body. So release is not only cognitive but felt and integrated. It describes reconsolidation mechanics simply. When a memory is retrieved in a calm, new context, the hypnotic field, and paired with corrective emotional experience, safety, acceptance, neutralization, the brain updates the memory's emotional valence, so the event remains, but its grip loosens. To facilitate this, the audio interleaves brief memory touchpoints with immediate soothing phrases and grounding anchors, so the subconscious can rewrite the old script without re-traumatizing the listener. Practical tools are given. The container technique. Visualize placing painful images into a secure box to be processed later. The witness posture. Observe the feeling with curiosity rather than identification. And micro-affirmations that reassign energy. My energy is mine. I welcome ease, which the chapter explains should be looped lightly. Repetition plus emotional resonance equals new associative weighting. It normalizes release symptoms: tears, yawn-like exhales, sudden fatigue, dream activity, and reframes them as signs of movement, not failure, giving soothing aftercare instructions: rest, warm drink, gentle movement, brief journaling, to help re-regulate afterwards. The chapter also addresses resistance. Parts of the self may fear letting go because old pain has been misused as identity or protection, so the narrative uses internal negotiation language. Part of you wants to keep this. Part of you is ready to release. Both are welcome. To reduce inner conflict and invite cooperation. For deeper blocks, the audio sequences layer in safety anchors that can be re-evoked in waking life. A single breath pattern, a fingertip press, creating state-dependent retrieval, so the same calm state can be re-entered when memory pops up later. The chapter offers tailored mini-scripts for common block types: grief, soft remembering, plus permission to carry forward the love without the ache; shame, compassion phrases, plus embodied self-acceptance cues; anger, safe expression rituals, plus release, visualizations, and self-blame, forgiveness frames that separate action from identity, so listeners have concrete language that matches their felt experience. It gives guidance on pacing. Short nightly exposures are safer and more effective than one marathon session. On environment, dim lights, comfortable posture, no interruptions. And on integration, a morning check-in, a single-sentence journal. Prompt like one small shift I felt and a tiny behavioral test to confirm change. Important safety boundaries are also emphasized. If memories are highly traumatic, involuntary flashbacks increase, or the person feels overwhelmed, these audio techniques are supportive but not a substitute for trauma-informed therapy. The chapter therefore recommends professional support when needed and offers simple grounding steps to use in the moment. 5 senses scan, slow grounded breaths, name 3 physical objects near you. Finally, the chapter reframes letting go as energetic reallocation. What you release frees attention, time, and vitality to be invested in creativity, connection, and purpose. And it closes by teaching the listener how to track progress with small metrics, less time replaying, fewer physiological spikes, easier sleep, so the invisible gains of release become visible reminders that letting go is not loss, but the recovery of inner resource and freedom. Chapter 10. Morning Awakening Script. The Morning Awakening Script is described as a precise and intentional practice that uses the unique mental state between sleep and full wakefulness to lock in positive suggestions, calm the nervous system, and set the tone for the entire day. And this chapter goes into extraordinary depth about why this short window, known as the hypnopompic state, is so critical. During this time, the analytical part of the brain is still quiet, the subconscious is highly impressionable, and the nervous system is adjusting to the natural cortisol awakening response, meaning that what you do and think in those first few minutes either reinforces old fears and anxieties or builds new patterns of calm strength and motivation. To guide this moment, the script begins with simple sensory awareness, 3 to 5 deep breaths with long exhalations, feeling the weight of the body supported by the bed, and noticing warmth, comfort, and safety, which stabilizes the mind before thoughts have a chance to race. Next, it introduces short affirmations designed to soothe the subconscious while also nudging it toward action, such as, I am safe. This is a new beginning. I am clear, calm, and capable. And today I move forward with ease. These are kept brief, in the present tense, and believable to bypass inner resistance, and each is paired with a physical cue to deepen the connection, such as placing a hand on the heart, stretching the arms wide, or smiling gently to signal to the body that the words are real. The chapter explains that layering visualization onto these affirmations multiplies their impact. As the affirmations are repeated, the listener is guided to picture golden morning light filling the body, spreading warmth through the chest and limbs, and imagine the day flowing smoothly, seeing themselves walking confidently, completing tasks without effort, interacting positively with others, and experiencing the satisfaction of results already achieved, because the subconscious mind responds most powerfully to sensory-rich images tied to emotions. And when these visualizations are planted first thing in the morning, they act like instructions the brain seeks to fulfill throughout the day. This is followed by what the chapter calls micro-actions. Tiny physical steps that bridge inner intention with outer behavior, such as drinking a prepared glass of water by the bedside, opening the curtains to let in natural light, journaling, one gratitude point or one simple intention, or taking the first step of a task rather than thinking about the whole plan. These small, tangible wins give the nervous system proof that the script is working, reinforcing belief and motivation through action rather than thought alone. The chapter also emphasizes consistency, noting that repeating this script daily conditions the subconscious to expect mornings to feel safe and purposeful, which gradually reprograms the default waking state from anxious, scattered, or resistant to focused, relaxed, and proactive. It cautions against starting the day with phone notifications, emails, or negative thoughts, since the subconscious is still absorbing cues and instead stresses that the script must be the first impression of the day to overwrite old programming. Over time, this ritual builds a feedback loop. Nighttime affirmations plant seeds of calm and confidence. Morning scripts activate those seeds. Micro-actions nurture them, and the results of the day provide reinforcement to strengthen the pattern, creating a self-sustaining cycle of growth. The chapter is also practical in addressing obstacles. For people who wake with panic or dread, it recommends extending the breathing phase and focusing longer on safety-based affirmations before introducing action-oriented ones. For those who struggle with low energy or depression, it suggests energizing cues like stretching, opening windows for fresh air, or using bright visualizations of sunlight and vitality. For those with restless or racing thoughts, it includes grounding strategies such as naming 5 things you see or feel to anchor attention in the present moment. It explains that personalization is key, encouraging the listener to adjust affirmations to their own challenges and goals, while keeping them positive and believable, because forced or exaggerated statements may create subconscious resistance. The chapter also outlines how to adapt the script for different lifestyles. If waking early, for work, the script can be shortened to 60 to 90 seconds. If mornings are flexible, it can extend into a longer routine, including journaling, light movement, or meditation. For frequent travelers or shift workers, it suggests anchoring the script with portable cues like a favorite scent, a small object, or a repeated gesture, so the subconscious recognizes the ritual even in unfamiliar environments. To keep the practice effective long-term, it recommends rotating or slightly refreshing affirmations every few weeks while maintaining the same anchor gestures, ensuring both novelty and familiarity. Ultimately, the morning awakening script is portrayed as a bridge that transforms the vulnerable, impressionable minutes after sleep into a powerful launchpad for the day, combining breath, affirmation, imagery, physical anchoring, and action to create alignment between subconscious programming and conscious behavior. By practicing daily, mornings shift from being points of tension, confusion, or autopilot habits into moments of clarity, empowerment, and direction, setting in motion a ripple effect where the entire day unfolds more smoothly. Decisions are made with greater ease, productivity rises naturally, and emotional balance is maintained with less effort. Over weeks and months, this consistency rewires not only the morning state, but the overall nervous system and subconscious mind, teaching the body and brain to expect safety, capability, and forward movement every time the day begins, which creates lasting transformation in confidence, resilience, and the ability to live intentionally rather than reactively. Chapter 11. Living with the New Mindset. Living with the new mindset is described in this chapter as the stage where transformation is no longer something you consciously work to maintain, but rather something you embody in your thoughts, emotions, and daily actions, and it explains in great detail how the subconscious shifts from being a place of hidden resistance to a powerful ally that automatically supports your growth. It begins by emphasizing that the new mindset is not just a collection of affirmations repeated at night or in the morning, but a living pattern woven into the nervous system, thought loops, and emotional responses. So instead of waking up anxious, your body feels safe. Instead of approaching problems with doubt, you naturally look for solutions. Instead of shrinking in conversations, you feel grounded and worthy. The chapter explains that this shift happens because the subconscious, once programmed with fear or limitation, has now been overwritten through repetition, emotional anchoring, and consistent practice of hypnosis and affirmations. And the brain itself has rewired its neural pathways through neuroplasticity, so that positive associations are now the automatic defaults. The detail extends into showing how this mindset expresses itself in ordinary daily life. When receiving criticism, instead of spiraling into shame, the new subconscious programming interprets it as feedback and growth. When money challenges arise, the new mindset does not collapse into scarcity thinking, but seeks opportunities, remains calm, and trusts abundance. When relationships bring tension, rather than replaying old patterns of blame or fear, the new mindset guides you to listen, respond with compassion, and set boundaries without guilt. Even the smallest situations, being stuck in traffic, waiting in a line, dealing with an unexpected expense, are handled differently because the automatic reaction is patience, perspective, and trust, and this creates an entirely different emotional reality that reinforces health, energy, and stability. The chapter explains that the new mindset is not about forcing positivity, which often leads to denial or suppression, but about genuine alignment between conscious desires and subconscious beliefs so that actions and choices flow more naturally, with less inner conflict and less need for willpower. It also describes how living with the new mindset deeply affects relationships with others. People feel the shift in your energy, confidence, and calm presence, and as a result, interactions become more harmonious, opportunities for collaboration open up, and respect grows because others sense stability and clarity in you. At the same time, you stop tolerating toxic patterns or manipulations, not because of anger, but because your sense of worth is too strong to allow them, and this naturally reshapes your environment to reflect higher standards. The chapter notes that living with this new mindset also means you carry a sense of abundance in your energy, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. So you give without fear of loss, share kindness without exhaustion, and attract experiences that resonate with the vibration of trust and openness rather than lack and limitation. Another important point this chapter highlights is that the body itself becomes a mirror of the new mindset. Posture improves because the subconscious no longer carries the weight of fear and defeat. Breathing deepens because anxiety no longer drives shallow breath. Digestion improves because stress hormones no longer flood the system. Sleep quality rises because the body feels safe to fully rest. These physiological changes reinforce the mindset, creating a feedback loop where the body's calmness strengthens the mind's calmness, and the mind's positivity strengthens the body's balance. The chapter also reminds the reader that living with the new mindset requires maintenance, returning to affirmations during difficult moments, practicing gratitude, protecting your mental environment from negative inputs, and treating setbacks as reminders rather than failures, because old patterns may try to resurface, but with practice they lose power and fade into irrelevance. It provides examples of how this mindset impacts long-term goals. Instead of postponing dreams out of fear, you start taking small, consistent steps, and each small win reinforces belief. Instead of sabotaging yourself with doubt, you allow success to feel normal and expand into greater opportunities. Instead of being paralyzed by choices, you trust intuition and move forward decisively, knowing that even mistakes are part of growth. The new mindset turns time itself into an ally because you no longer waste energy battling resistance, and this accelerates progress. The chapter also shows how emotional blocks dissolve. Anger softens into understanding, grief transforms into wisdom, fear turns into excitement for possibility, because the subconscious has relearned to process emotions rather than avoid them. In its deepest detail, the chapter explains that living with the new mindset is about identity. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to become confident, abundant, or peaceful. You see yourself as someone who already is those things. And this identity shapes every thought, choice, and action without conscious effort. You do not try to meditate or be mindful. You naturally choose calm because it feels right. You do not force yourself to believe in abundance. You simply expect it, and it appears in your reality. You do not push yourself to heal. You naturally release pain because it no longer matches your identity. Over time, this way of being creates a reality that feels aligned, effortless, and expansive, where challenges become tools for growth rather than threats. And opportunities multiply because the subconscious is constantly guiding you toward experiences that match your empowered frequency. Conclusion. The conclusion pulls the whole program into a clear map of how lasting change actually happens. It explains that transformation is not a single miracle moment, but the cumulative result of repeatedly shifting the nervous system, rewriting subconscious associations, and aligning small daily choices with new internal scripts so that what once felt effortful becomes automatic. It describes the mechanisms behind this, how relaxed states and hypnagogic windows allow suggestions to bypass the critical mind, how repetition and emotional resonance strengthen synaptic pathways, neuroplasticity, and how memory reconsolidation updates the emotional charge of old events so memories remain but no longer trigger reactive patterns, and then turns those mechanisms into practical, testable routines, nighttime loops that plant safety and identity phrases, morning bridges that translate overnight learning into immediate microactions, embodied anchors like a fingertip-to-heart cue, or a breath pattern that recreate the receptive state, and tiny behavioral tests within 10 minutes of waking that provide the brain with concrete evidence the new scripts are real. It shows how healing, clarity, and abundance are not abstract goals, but emergent properties of changed attention. The mind learns to notice opportunities instead of threats. Regulated physiology, softer breathing, steadier heart rate, deeper sleep, and reorganized habits, breaking tasks into micro-steps, saying one kind phrase to yourself before hard conversations, setting boundaries with a calm tone. And it explains the ripple effects across life. Relationships shift because calmer presence invites healthier dynamics. Work performance improves because focus and decision speed increase, and energy formerly spent on guarding against imagined threats is reclaimed for creativity and connection. The conclusion also addresses the realistic timeline and maintenance needs. Expect non-linear progress with small, incremental wins and occasional plateaus. Measure change with simple metrics: morning mood rating, number of micro-actions completed, reduction in automatic worry. Refresh phrasing periodically to avoid habituation, and treat setbacks as feedback rather than failure, adjusting loop length, tone, or anchors as needed. Safety and limits are made explicit. These techniques gently rewire many patterns, but intense trauma or worsening symptoms may require trauma-informed therapy or medical support. And when memories become overwhelming, the right step is to pause, ground with breath and body awareness, and seek professional care. Finally, the conclusion reframes the entire endeavor as an identity shift rather than a performance. Over time, the repeated night and morning rituals, the embodied micro-behaviors, and the subtle rewiring of the subconscious change how one interprets experience so that calm, confidence, and clarity become the baseline way of being rather than a project to maintain. And this steady, internal shift produces outward results. better sleep, clearer decisions, smoother relationships, and a felt sense of freedom, while inviting continued gentle practice, curiosity, and compassionate self-observation as the habits of a new, resilient life.